Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special online event today. It's called the Kinēsa process, a new Feldenkrais-inspired somatic movement system. Liberate yourself from physical and emotional pain for greater mobility, vitality, and freedom. My name is Stephen Dyna. I'm the founder and CEO of the Shift Network, and I'm really delighted to be with you here, getting to learn from one of the foremost pioneers in the field of somatics, and a teacher that has really become beloved at the Shift Network for her way of combining a lot of humor and grace and deep wisdom about the body to expand the range of possibilities and freedom from pain and suffering that so often goes with bodies as they get older and need a little more attention. So her name is Lavinia Plonka. She's a guild-certified Feldenkrais practitioner and emotional body lead teacher. She also has a background in theater, which kind of creates a really interesting backstory for some of the work that she is doing now. So Lavinia, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Stephen. It's absolutely delightful to see you again.
Well, I'm super excited because this is actually a synthesis of a lot of work that's been building for many years now, many decades of study and practice into a methodology that really is a unique synthesis. So I'm excited to dive into this today with you. And we're also excited that we're going to have a chance to go much deeper in your brand new upcoming program on the Kinēsa process, which is going to be a bridge into a whole year-long certification. So we're very excited by this offering and this opportunity. So Lavinia, let's start a little bit with your backstory and the various threads that have woven together into this unique synthesis that is called the Kinēsa process.
Wow, thank you, Stephen. There are so many different threads that go with this process, but you could say in some ways that it began with my exploration of the Feldenkrais method. Before I became a Feldenkrais teacher, I was a performer. I was actually a mime performer. And so I was telling stories silently all over the world for about 20-something years. And I had, of course, developed this understanding and ability for how to express emotions without words through posture, through gesture. And then when I discovered the Feldenkrais method, I learned about how these emotions are sort of part of a pattern in ourselves, that there's actually a logic to why when a person looks like this, they are actually feeling sad, or when anger comes up and I express anger, what that's doing to my breath. Feldenkrais, of course, called them emotional habits. And in the training, we learned so much about how to bring our emotions, our movement, our thinking, and our feeling together. And then I went on from there to start teaching the Feldenkrais method and realizing that a lot of people were unable to actually take the pleasure and the learning that they were getting on the floor in a Feldenkrais lesson and actually applying it to their lives in the emotional, mental, and even the spiritual capacity. And parallel with that, of course, I've had a lifelong practice of working on myself in a spiritual discipline based on the ideas of Gurdjieff. And Gurdjieff was an influence on Feldenkrais as well. He actually was one of the first people to talk about this idea of thinking, feeling, and sensing all going on at the same time. So over the years, I was doing these workshops that were bringing together my personal search, my interest in mythology, my passion for understanding the body language process, and seeing how all of these different Feldenkrais lessons apply to deepening my understanding of myself while relieving pain, helping me move better, helping me see how moving better actually helps people think better. I kind of have a little tagline. I say, how you move is how you move through life, because your movement reflects how you are. And if you start with your movement and then let yourself go deeper, you can begin to really enact yourself to be the change you want to be in the world. And so I started to integrate different practices, writing, art, looking at different mythological stories that relate to the body. And it started to become the Kinēsa process. And so, and Kenissa, by the way, is my way of combining kinesthetic, emotion, sensation, and attention. the way I pay attention to myself, not the way, I mean, it's important to pay attention to others, but how I bring that attention into my sensation, my emotions, and my movement. And so here I am, bringing the Kenissa process to the shift.
I love when there's a synthesis of different methodologies, and there's all kinds of emergent insights that come from that synthesis. It's like we're building on the shoulders of what has gone before us. And I particularly find it fascinating, your whole training in being a mime, because you had to be able to depict in the ways that the body and mind and emotions are all kind of wound up together in a way without words that people can kind of intuitively sense. Oh, she's being frightened now. She's being, aggressive, or whatever it is, that it's like that there's a way in which you had to intuitively get how wound up the psyche and the body are together and the patterns of being, and do that in an entertaining way. And now you can really use that to help to expand these methodologies into more freedom in the body, which I think is just fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about that. The way you move is the way you move through life. And so the sort of the interconnection of our movement patterns with our overall experience and psychology of life too.
Yeah, it's interesting as you were speaking and you used that word intuitive. And that's what I learned, was that when I was working as a performer, I was using intuition, but there was no science behind it. There was no real knowledge behind it. And over the years, finding the science, how each emotion, for example, has its own breath pattern. It has its own postural pattern and facial expression. And then learning how the muscles of the face are governed by one particular cranial nerve and how that interacts with the vagus nerve to make me take on a specific posture is just so incredibly exciting. You've heard, I'm sure, the term that a lot of times people use of how your history is your biology, and how we carry the stories of our whole life in ourselves. Again, Feldenkrais said that we develop patterns based on circumstance, education, influence, and then those patterns get hardwired in us. And so when we're growing up even, we're already developing postural habits and attitudes that influence our moods, the way we speak, how we relate to others in the world, and ultimately how we find our pain, pleasure, and other situations. All of it, you could say all of it in one way or another, is chemistry or biochemistry, but I have the possibility of interfering with the habits that are not working for me anymore, right? We develop habits at different points in our lives in order to cope with a situation, whether it's an injury where, you develop a limp because you broke your leg, and then, 7 years later, you still have the limp, even though the leg healed a long time. So there was a time when the habit was really important, and then it becomes part of you. And then how does that limp affect your personality as well, especially if you didn't realize that you were still limping? I'm using that as a really broad physical example, but we carry these kind of habits within our biology all the time. A person who had a reflexive need to protect themselves as a child, for example, for whatever reason. Sometimes children interpret things that are not dangerous, but they develop a reflex like that. And then 40 years later, they're still carrying that around. And how does it feel when you're carrying this little chip on your shoulder all the time? How do people relate to you because of this small holding here? And then how does that affect your ability to be able to reach, to be able to jump, to be able to get what you want? So these are just simple little examples of how we develop these habits that are part of our movement vocabulary, but then they impact on our emotions, on our thoughts, and ultimately also can create physical pain that we're not even aware of. Because anytime that I take myself off of my skeletal integrity, I'm going to start to create changes in my structure, and that can eventually lead to pain as well. Pain can come from an accident, or pain can come from a habit.
So when you're starting to understand our own habit patterns, the tension patterns, the structural issues in our body, so what we're wanting to do is understand the sources, or we're really not as concerned about exactly where it came from, and we're just about retraining into a new pattern, so that a new pattern of the possible.
I love that you asked that question, because how can you really find a source in a system, right? If the system, everything in the system is happening in relationship to everything else in the system, then it doesn't really matter where you start, because every part of you is affected by every other part of you. It's funny sometimes when I teach a class or I work with people, and let's just say it's a lesson about relaxing the hip flexors, and inevitably someone will stand up and go, wow, my ankle feels better, or my jaw unlocked. And it's because so many parts are intimately connected in the pattern itself that if you just work with one part of the pattern, the rest of the pattern is going to respond. So, and that's, very different in a way from some of the other models where you come in with pain in your shoulder and they attack the shoulder. Actually, when we work, we often save that for last, because we feel like this is the traumatized part. This is the part that's protecting itself. This is the part that doesn't need any more information right now. Let's look at what's attached to it, what moves around it. How is the breath? How can we make it safe for this shoulder to feel better? So you're right, you do not have to uncover the source. You just start to look at the different pieces and see how they can interconnect with each other. Feldenkrais sometimes compared the body to a hologram. Like a hologram, each piece of the hologram contains the whole. And so each part of me contains the whole. I mean, let's face it, when we can clone ourselves, right? So if we think of that and look at myself as a system, I can start anywhere. I could start with my eyes and change a pattern in my lumbar spine if I want to.
Well, it's truly fascinating. I'm moving away from that kind of linear causality to a more of a systemic. And I think that leads to a different kind of intervention, as you're saying. I think so often we're kind of like, oh, let's go to the source and push on that and heal that. But that actually might be re-traumatizing in certain ways. And so I hear you're kind of working in from different angles to kind of actually build systemic shifts rather than just like, focus at that sort of what is the quote cause.
It's also safer, right? If you think about it, if you have an injury or you have a chronic pain, and then you dive into that spot, that area is going to want to protect itself. But if instead you create an atmosphere of safety where it feels good to explore another area, where I start to connect my breath to where I'm holding, then that area feeling safe will let go. And again, that has a lot to do with what we call the vagus response, right? Where when the vagus nerve feels like things are okay, it allows a different process to take place internally that allows me to feel relaxed and comfortable.
It sounds like part of the intelligence behind this is working with the body's adaptive responses rather than trying to override them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, we often say to correct is incorrect. There's a tendency a lot of times people have, they say, oh, gosh, my shoulders are up by my ears, and trying to push them down. And when we try to push the shoulders down, 90% of the time, 30 seconds later, the shoulders are back up again because the habit is there. And the nervous system thinks that this is who I am. I am Lavinia with shoulders up by my ears. So we actually go in the other direction sometimes and support the habit. In fact, I'll be talking about that a little bit later when we do our experiential thing. But the idea that instead of trying to force myself to correct, I allow myself to support something with attention, right, which is the A in Kenissa, this idea that I'm attending to my shoulders for a few minutes, I'm giving it my breath, I'm holding it there, and my shoulders start to want to come down. It's almost as if the nervous system says, what are you doing up there? Relax. But it's not verbal. It's a process where the system starts to realize that that's not necessary. We start to find the more functional choice.
It's such a different orientation. I think of how I often will go for a massage or something. I'm just like, oh, just, wring it out of me. And it's a little bit like I'm not getting at the deeper patterns a lot of time when I do that, and understanding like the adaptive part of it too. So it's very interesting. So I think now would be a good time to do a first demonstration. I know you want to do 2 different demonstrations that people can really take with them. And maybe you can demonstrate how some of these principles apply in working with our throat, which is a place where a lot of people get different kinds of tension patterns and habits built up.
So great. So the thing about what I wanted to do with the throat is to look at it from this Kenissa perspective. Instead of saying, oh, well, we're going to relax the throat, let's think about what is here. What does the throat, you could say the throat chakra, this process of being able to move whatever is coming from my heart, from my emotions, out to be able to speak my truth. So while I'll be relaxing this area, I'm also going to be improving the quality of my voice. And so here's a perfect example of how I put things together. I'd like to invite everybody, and hopefully you can do this quickly, to grab a piece of paper and a pen or some kind of a writing device. And we're going to look at what it really means to vocalize something that you want for yourself in the world. And I'd like to invite you to jot down a few sentences. And nobody's going to hear you, obviously. So you're there by yourself, having the opportunity to write down some things that you want for yourself, some things that you'd like to declare about yourself, something that you'd like to say to somebody that you've never said. And, and if you can't think of anything, that's totally fine. You can also write Mary Had a Little Lamb if you want, but put something down on a piece of paper that you can read. And I'll give you an example because I love doing this exercise because it helps me actually clarify what it is I'm trying to do in my life. So I wrote, I have a wish to be an agent of change in this world. I have the clarity, compassion, power, and sense of humor to be of service and enjoy every moment. So you see, it's not just a few words, but it's several sentences. And it's important because you want to be able to feel the movement of your voice as we do this. And then I would like you to just speak what you've written. So I'll give everybody a moment to just write things down. And like I said, if you can't think of anything, write the lyrics to your favorite song, because I like the idea of you speaking your truth, but I also know that I'm dropping this exercise right on you. And sometimes I know for myself, my mind goes blank. And so now I just invite everyone to just speak it. But as you're speaking it, listen to your voice. Notice your breath. Sense how your mouth is moving. Feel how your tongue is responding in your mouth. Notice what's happening in your shoulders and in your facial expression as you're saying your words. And by the way, if you've already finished saying it and I'm still talking, feel free to repeat it, because we're going to come back to it a few times during the course of this exercise. And notice how often you have to take a breath as you say your words. Not that we're trying to do any sort of endurance thing or anything, but just noticing how much comes out before you feel you have to pause and take a breath. And then I'd like you to just put that piece of paper down and close your eyes for a moment. You won't have to be looking at anything, so just close your eyes for a moment and begin to sense the air coming into your nostrils. So you'll feel as you're breathing that the air kind of goes across your upper lip and into your nose, and just sense how it goes into your nose. And when it goes into your nose, it goes to the back of your palate. And in the back of your palate are two little holes that go down into your trachea. so that the breath comes into your nose and moves down, and then it moves into your bronchioles, and you can feel your lungs expanding. And then as you exhale, that process is reversed. So just take a moment to sense that magical continuous process that's happening. And we're going to be coming back to the breath several times over the course of the exercise to check in. Notice the length of your inhale and your exhale. You can even maybe count right now as you exhale. Again, using your voice, counting out loud and seeing how many numbers you count as you exhale. And it's better to say it out loud so that you really can feel your voice. 8, 9, 10, 11, however long it goes. Feeling how it moves all the way down into your diaphragm and then moves all the way back up. Now, as you stay connected to this quiet breathing pattern, could you turn your attention to the inside of your mouth and notice how your tongue is resting in your mouth? Don't worry about having a wrong or a right answer. Again, like I said earlier, it's not about trying to correct something, especially when I don't even really know how it should be. Sometimes people try to correct something because people told them, oh, you should sit up straight. And it's really not about that. It's about recognizing how I am. So maybe your tongue is resting in the bottom of your jaw. Maybe your tongue is up against the roof of your palate. Maybe it feels like it's a little off to the side. Just notice where your tongue is. And then could you just very easily take your tongue and see if you can press, without force, press your tongue against the roof of your mouth, your palate, and see if your tongue can spread to sort of form the shape of your palate. Just feel the shape of your upper palate. Notice whether it feels like a dome or whether it feels like there's a peak in the middle. You can play around with moving your tongue a little bit. You know, your tongue is a huge muscle, and it goes all the way deep down into your throat. Again, connecting to the throat area so that if the muscle in the back of the tongue gets tense, the throat can become tense as well. You're pressing and releasing. And then just take your hands and bring them right underneath your chin. If you want to open your eyes for a moment, if you have them closed. And just as you're pressing your tongue against the roof of your mouth, just feel how as you press, you're going to feel a little bit of a reaction down in here. That's the actual back of your tongue hard at work. You might need to move your fingers around a little bit to find it. And then can you do it soft enough that you don't feel that movement underneath here, that your tongue is just really softly moving up and down, right? A lot of times in our movement processes, we try to make the movement even smaller, even softer, so that the hidden tensions that we're not even aware exist, I mean, who thinks I have a tense tongue, right? Can start to let go. And then just let that go and just breathe naturally for a moment. Sensing your face, where your tongue is now, whether it's changed its relationship to your mouth a bit. And then turn your attention to your jaw. And you might want to bring your fingers again, open your eyes if they're closed, and bring your fingers right to the front of the middle of your ear there. And you'll feel as you open and close your mouth, you'll feel your temporomandibular joint. And as you open and close, you may notice that one side feels a little bit different than the other, or one side maybe even feels tender. And again, you don't have to open wide. This is just to feel that muscle. I'm exaggerating a little bit just so that you can see that. And then bring your hands down. Once again, close your eyes and just let yourself open your mouth a little bit and then close it a little bit so that the jaw is opening a little bit and then closing a little bit. Several times, just opening and closing. And seeing if you can let the muscles there just allow your mouth to open. Now, of course, this muscle is very important for human communication, not just in speaking, but in presenting ourselves, because nobody walks around with their jaw just hanging open. We even have expressions about people who, they call them mouth breathers, or he had a slack jaw, right? So it's not that we want to have our mouth hanging open all the time, but many of us are actually going in the opposite direction, gritting our teeth. TMJ dysfunction is a huge, huge part of our civilization's problems. And again, it creates tension in the throat. So just letting that go. And then the next time that you lower your jaw, just let it move a little to the right and return. And then a little to the left and return, very little, almost like you're creating a little L. Lower your jaw, a little to the right, return, a little to the left and return. And you'll notice that it's different to the two sides. Especially if you do it really small, you can really pay attention. So you're softening your jaw, you're softening your tongue, sensing your breath. Remember your breath coming in through the nose, traveling down. And now I want to work a little bit with sound as we start to bring our voices in through this channel of communication. So you'll love this. You're simply going to hum. So breathing in through your nose and then letting the hum come out through your nose for as long as possible. And seeing if as you do this hum, doesn't have to be loud, it doesn't have to be forced, it doesn't have to be pushed, but imagine that air that you've been taking in just moving out, just moving out. And now I'd like you to take your sentences, the sentences that you've been working on, and I'd like you to read them again, just out loud in a regular way, to just listen to your voice at the moment, because we're going to do something really interesting. And now I'd like to invite you to read your sentences again, but we're going to use a strategy, a learning strategy that we call the process of constraint. You're going to read, but you're not allowed to move your lips, your tongue, or your teeth. So it's actually going to sound an awful lot like that hum, and just have fun with it, but really try to see if you can keep it. And I'll do it with you because I enjoy doing this. It's really interesting to think, how can I communicate when I can't move any of the parts that communicate? Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. 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 Or at least it'll probably sound something like that. And I was really glad that I wrote the word sense of humor as we're doing this. So now you're going to do it again. And this time you can move your tongue, but not your lips or your teeth. So try it again, letting your tongue move. You'll be amazed to realize how powerful and busy your tongue is. Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm. And now you can move your lips and your tongue. but not your teeth. So your teeth stay together as you do it. I have a wish to be an agent of change in this world. I have the clarity, compassion, power, and sense of humor to be of service and enjoy every moment. Take a moment to feel your mouth. Sense your breath. Think about your sentences. And if they do contain a truth that you need to share, now say it with all the parts of your mouth, allowing that breath to move from your diaphragm and out. And then take a moment and come back to your breathing, just sensing your breath. And go back to counting how long your exhale is. Taking a breath in and then allowing yourself to count 1, 2, however long it goes. And just notice if in this few minutes, even the quality of your breathing has changed in some way. So that was an exploration to see how you could open up the throat, allow what needs to come from your heart out by relaxing this whole part of yourself. And by the way, notice your face. Maybe that's changed a little bit too.
That was truly fascinating. I have to say that it really led me to notice different ways of tension patterns in my jaw and throat and into my shoulders that were all connected, and started kind of led to the recognition of how, like, even the speaking of a declaration like that is going to run through all of those tension patterns, and which are going to undermine its manifestation, or at least change the direction, unless we become more conscious of it. So that was really fascinating.
And I love what you just said, Stephen, because that's so true. So many times people talk about affirmations or the importance of declaring what they want, but there are these hidden habitual patterns that are in the body that are going, oh, no, you don't. No, that's not going to happen. And how can I truly embody what it is that I want to say or do in this world?
So to really, truly embody, we have to work with these, the legacy patterns in our body, the systemic habits of what we're doing, or else we're always going to be undermining our ability to create that which we're truly intending to create.
Right, and that's the beauty of this work. We just did the throat and the jaw and the breath, but imagine that there are movement processes and exercises that are for every single part. How our knees express emotion, how we influence our power center. All of these parts of ourselves have different ways of being awakened.
Yeah, and it's also clear, I think, we often think of emotion as a little bit more localized into the area where we feel it strongest, but it has little tendrils that go through the whole body. So each emotional state is going to kind of have its little tendrils into each part, it seems like.
Absolutely. You can tell how someone is feeling at a party just by looking at what their feet are doing.
Well, at least you can. Maybe we'll get better at it. But so let's start. I know, but you're going to lead another exercise here where we're standing up and demonstrate. But maybe just talk a little bit about this sort of the principle of what we're moving towards, which is more about emotional fluency and being able to move in a choiceful way rather than sort of a frozen habitual way.
Wow, there's so much that you just said. First of all, when people hear the term emotional fluency, it's like, well, what does that mean? I know how to be fluent in a language, but how can I become fluent in my emotions? And yet our emotions are a language. They call it body language, right? So the process that I've developed, I don't know if you want me to go into this right now, but the process that I've developed has to do with all the different ways that we carry ourselves in this vessel. I call this my vessel. And that really, I have 7 bodies. You could say we probably have many, many more bodies, but I look at 7 of them. And they're the physical body, which is my anatomy, my pain and pleasure, my sensations, my emotional body, which is how I express myself to others and to myself, my mental body, which is how I envision or clarify, take in information and respond with information. And by the way, there are some esoteric traditions that speak about these bodies either kind of in layers outside of us or interpenetrating. It doesn't really matter. To me, they're all contained within this vessel. Then I also think it's important to have the creative body, where the creative body takes this mental, physical, and emotional process, integrates it, and begins to look at choice, how I choose to manifest in the world, how I create my reality, how I create my relationships, or how I create my great artwork, using these parts in order to find my own spontaneity, my own presence in the world. And I call those the visible body. But then there's more that I call beyond the visible. This energetic system that I alluded to a little bit, a lot of your audience, of course, understands that this movement through energy centers that some people call the chakras or the dantians that are there and are available to us, and how understanding those ancient traditions connected with this movement process can enrich both. So that if a person is studying some of these and understands more about how the physical body works, they are able to go deeper into that study. And all of these things, this knowledge, can help me with health, pain relief, realization of self-sabotaging habits. And then as we go deeper into the beyond the visible bodies, then we have the archetypal body. And we know that there are many, many archetypes. I like to focus on 4, the warrior, the teacher, the healer, and the visionary, because to me, those are 4 cornerstone archetypes that are in most traditions, and that also in their finest hours reflect the change we want to be in the world. And so how do they manifest in our bodies all the time in our history and how we relate to others? And then finally, there's our alchemical body, our potential for transformation. And for me, this is, the possibility of being the most human that I could be, to be able to connect myself from the ground to whatever's higher, simply by being more functional and more aware and more present. So, they used to say that the alchemists were not really trying to turn lead into gold. They were actually using that as a metaphor for how to transform themselves, their own personal lead, into gold. So using movement, I work with that. So that to me is the Kenissa process, or part of the Kenissa process, that I plan on sharing in the course. And I use all of those in order to help people begin to move through life in the way that they choose.
What a great overview, and really clear how holistic this process is, to go through all those different layers and really integrate them in a freedom of movement and fluency. So I know you wanted to do a stand-up demonstration as well to give us another taste of how this applies in practice. So why don't you take some time to do that now?
So it's actually a seated presentation, because I figure everyone there is seated. And I want you to have the experience. A lot of times in Kenissa movements, we actually work lying down, like in a lot of other somatic traditions. But I like bringing things up into the vertical, because most of the time when we're lying down in life, we're either just hanging out or we're sleeping. So we use it for our learning, but we also want to apply it to life. And so here you are sitting, and I'm going to sit. One of the reasons that I chose this particular sequence is because we sit so much. And how does sitting influence my ability to be able to move forward in the world? If I'm sitting in my chair, if I'm sitting in my car, if I'm sitting watching television, I'm not using the bottom half of myself, and then the spine gets compressed, then it's no longer able to support the weight of the head gets pulled forward, and when the head is pulled forward and the spine is compressed, gradually I begin to develop a posture that happens to be the postural expression of sadness. So even though you might not think that you're feeling sad in this particular position, or maybe even not feeling that you're tense, there's a lot of tension that's happening in the chest. The chest is pulling the shoulders forward. The muscles of the neck are having to work very hard to keep your head from falling down. And physiologically, it begins to impact on your breathing, on your heart rate. The nervous system starts to interpret what's going on, and it decides that you must be depressed, and it starts changing the chemical composition of what's going on inside of you. So I thought it would be really useful to just have a few strategies that you could use when you're catching yourself, either with your head forward or your chest compacted, wanting to feel a little bit of relief, but you can't necessarily leave your desk and go outside for a walk, or you are, don't do this while you're driving down the highway, but if you're at a red light or something, to just start to feel that you can free up your spine a little bit to reduce some of that tension that's pulling you in, and in the process, elevate your mood. So I'd like to invite you to just interlace your fingers, place them underneath the back of your head. I'm going to just turn around so you can see it. So you're not doing it behind your neck, you're putting it behind your head, and let your elbows come forward. Remember, I talked about supporting the habit. We're going to support the habit right now. You're going to let your head go down, but as your head goes down, I want you to allow your belly to sink backward so that you're rounding as if you were going to contemplate your navel, and let the weight of your arms weigh you down so you can really feel yourself in this rounded position. And then I want you to imagine that someone you trust has gotten a hold of both of your elbows, and they're pulling your elbows up towards the ceiling, so that it's not that you're trying to crane your neck, but these elbows are moving upward, and in the process of moving upward, you start to feel an extension in your spine. Notice that I'm not going backwards. I'm just letting these elbows move upward. And then I let those elbows come down as if they wanted to come into my waist. I round my back, and then I come back up. So feeling that movement in yourself can begin to start to relax your whole spine. And I'm just going to add one more little thing, because a lot of times, especially if you're spending a lot of time typing or doing this, you lose the freedom in this upper torso. So just give yourself a hug. And from this hug position, could you just once again let your head go down, your elbows come down, and then once again let your elbows go up, and you're looking at your elbows. You're going down. Maybe you're breathing too. That would be great, wouldn't it? And then coming up. And as you come up, could you push your belly out? I could do a whole session on the importance of a full belly, but I won't do that today. We'll save that for the course. And you can feel how that opens up the whole back of yourself as you round and then let that come forward. So these are just two little strategies that can help you feel a little bit less tension, and maybe as your posture improves, the world looks a little bit lighter.
Well, that's super helpful, Lavinia. And I love the philosophy that it's just like such a gentle way of blending with and working with your body's patterns rather than sort of trying to override and force. It's really so refreshing to have that kind of respect in the way you're working with your body to open up the deeper gifts. So I think this is a great moment for us to transition and talk more explicitly about your upcoming program, since this is really going to be the best opportunity to dive into this methodology that synthesizes multiple streams and really has this respectful, intelligent way of working with the body and opening up new patterns of possibility, new freedoms, and really being able to be in full body integrity with who you are and how you're showing up in a way that reduces pain and increases joyfulness and expands our movement possibilities and emotional fluency. So this program is called the Kinēsa process. It is a foundational program, and it is going to actually be the first step into a whole year-long certification. But if you want to explore further, this is the best place to start. So you can find the program laid out in detail at the URL kinessasomatics.com, and Kenissa is Kinesa, somatics.com. It's a 7-week program. There's no prerequisites. So it's really, if you just feel the curiosity or pull that you know that something can open in your body and life as a result of this process, or if you just think that Lavinia is pretty cool to learn from, there's really no risk in taking this program since there's a money-back guarantee of your satisfaction. So Lavinia, I'd love for you to share a little bit about the intention of this program and what people will get as a result of taking the 7-week journey with you, and then I'll read out the module titles. You can give us a little preview of what's coming.
So my hope is that through this 7-week journey, people will start to feel more flexible, more resilient, physically, mentally, and emotionally. You'll improve your balance, inner and outer balance. Some of the other things that will happen is as you transform, of course, the posture will improve. Your ability to be able to listen and respond to different situations. So that's where we get into emotional fluency. What does it mean to be able to be in an emotional pattern and to be able to listen to somebody and be responsive instead of reactive? People will find many strategies for pain relief, for stress relief, for finding ways to access their own resources of the archetypes. So there's like a whole lot of different things. I mean, it's an overview of the Kinēsa process in the 7 weeks. And so everyone will be getting a taste of different aspects of those 7 bodies that I mentioned before.
So module 1, your physical body, learn the language of your nervous system to reduce pain and increase flexibility.
So we're specifically going to be looking at back pain, because the back is such an important part of ourselves, and because so many people carry patterns of posture or pain in their backs, we're going to focus on that. But again, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter where we start, because once your back is more functional, other things will improve as well. And so we'll be looking at what I call experiential anatomy, understanding how the back moves and how the back could move more freely with a movement exercise that allows you to find more flexibility in your spine, allow the vertebrae to relax, and at the same time, listening to how the nervous system responds to these very subtle pieces of information. So going with the physical first.
Module 2, your emotional body, improve your mood as you improve your posture.
So one of the things that I also teach is a process called the emotional body. Actually, that's the name of the organization. And they talk about the different emotional effector patterns that live in ourselves, basic patterns, and then, of course, more complex patterns. So we're going to be looking at how you can use your breath to calm the nervous system and find a centering way of being with yourself through the breath. And then we'll explore one of the actual emotional effector patterns through the somatic process, as well as looking at the facial expression, the posture, and the breath that go with the emotion of tenderness.
Module 3, your mental body, apply intelligent choice to your actions.
Oh, that's a fun one, because we're going to look at how you can use visualization, imagination, and intentionality to affect your movement. And we're going to be looking at a movement that involves, you could say it's a version of baby movement, but it's a way of using your movement to get you going in different directions and choosing places that maybe you hadn't thought about, places that you might find the unknown. And how do you approach the unknown through a thought process?
Module 4, your creative body, open to new possibilities and spontaneity.
Oh, here we play with a movement process that allows you to make mistakes, to fail, to see what it's like to take a risk when it's really not a risk because you're lying on the floor, but finding new ways of thinking in the moment through movement, and then using that to integrate some of the different ideas that you had in the first 3 modules.
Module 5, your archetypal body. Discover the healer archetype and the power of your hands to address wounds.
So I chose the healer archetype specifically because so many of us come to these courses with a story about our pain or our wound, and the healer archetype is within each of us. And I wanted to share some of the power of the healer archetype, as well as having all of us be able to explore the energy and the power of the hands.
Module 6, your energy body, finding your voice, speaking your truth, and unlocking your jaw.
So you had a little taste of what that module is going to be like, but we're going to spend the entire module on looking at that relationship of the throat chakra to the heart, as well as the 6th chakra, how we connect our thoughts and our heart through our voice, and also connecting that with how the jaw and the pelvis are related, and how our core communicates also through our throat. So everything is going out that way in this particular module.
And finally, module 7, your alchemical body, access the power of inner transformation.
So in that particular one, again, we're going to bring it all together, but we're going to be looking at it from what I call inner illumination, a way to use meditation and very subtle movement to go inside, to be able to literally illuminate the inside of myself with my ability to envision, to sense, and to feel. It's a very powerful, very relaxing, but very powerful experience with minimal movement, but maximal participation.
Well, what a beautiful offering, and very holistic, and going through all different 7 bodies and working with opening up our whole being, really, through more freedom of movement and greater somatic awareness. So again, you can find all the details at kinessasomatics.com, Kinesa somatics.com. You get not only the 7 90-minute live sessions with Lavinia, which includes interactive time, Q&A time, demonstration and practices. You're also going to get recordings, video and audio for every session, as well as word-for-word transcripts. There'll be small group time to connect with other participants and weekly exercises, as well as a Facebook community to support and deepen your experience. On the page, you'll also see a number of extra bonuses. First of all, there's a early release sneak peek PDF excerpt of Lavinia's upcoming book, You've Got the Power, 4 Paths to Awaken Your Body's Archetypal Energies. There's a dialogue with Lavinia and Larry Goldfarb called Movement and Presence. And I know you wanted to share a little bit more about Larry Goldfarb and why his work is complementary to yours.
So Larry Goldfarb is one of the premier master trainers of the Feldenkrais method in the world. He's done trainings all over the world. He studied with Moshe Feldenkrais, and he's got a beautiful, he's actually, he calls himself a cybernetician. He actually majored or had a PhD in cybernetics, which is a form of systems theory, and he blends his deep, deep understanding of systems with the Feldenkrais method. And then in our dialogue together, we looked at this idea of systems and the Feldenkrais method with this concept of what it means to be present to myself through movement. So it's a very, very special dialogue. People who have worked with Larry over the years have a deep respect for his ability to articulate and his sense of humor, which is one of the reasons that I love talking to him as well.
Well, that's a great extra bonus. And there's also a few more on the page, too. You're very generous with folks who also have an audio teaching on softening your ribs and livening your breath, really focusing more on the breath side of the equation here, as well as an audio teaching called The Smart Way to a Strong Core. So Lavinia has really got a very comprehensive way of working with the different systems of the body here. And we also have a special bonus that we've included, which is from the Shift Network. It's actually the top 4 sessions from Lavinia's appearances on our Shift Summits. We've done quite a number of somatic movement summits. We've done other sorts of healing and energy medicine summits. And so you're going to get the top 4 sessions from Lavinia's summit talks when you sign up by midnight tonight. We like to do that as a way to encourage you to tune in and make a decision now while you have the most connection with what she's offering, and really the best opportunity to discern if this is the right next step for you. So if you do get a yes internally and you want to move forward, warmly welcome to do so, and you get those 4 extra bonuses when you sign up by midnight tonight. We've kept the investment for this program, which includes not only the 7 live modules, all the recordings, and all the bonuses. We've kept it very accessible. It's just 3 payments of $109, or you save 10% when you pay up front with 1 payment of $297. The course is going to begin July 21st, run Thursdays at 10 Pacific, 1 Eastern. And but even if you can't make those live times, you can still get the full value by participating with the recordings and the community and the transcripts as well. And really, it's ultimately about you taking these practices into your life. So you can do that with the recordings and the downloads anytime. So this is also a foundational course that is going to lead into Lavinia's upcoming Kenissa certification program. This is going to be really the world premiere of this work as a certification process. It's really going to be quite a powerful year-long journey, the frontiers of somatic intelligence, and it's going to be personally transformative as well as give you a whole range of new perspectives and practices and tools to work with clients if you work in a professional way as well. So I encourage you to go to the page at kinessasomatics.com, Kinesa, somatics.com, and give it a read, tune in with yourself. Also pay attention to the testimonials of people who have worked with Lavinia before. There's so many rave reviews because she is wise and deep and fun and really creates a space of true learning for people to open to your deeper intelligence in a community of people who are committed to go further. So you're in good hands and you're in for a treat if you choose to learn and deepen into the Kenissa process, and you can do so at kinessasomatics.com. So Lavinia, we're at a couple minutes left. Anything that you haven't spoken to those who are considering going deeper into this methodology with you?
It's taken me a lifetime to bring all of these different threads together in a way that feels like a coherent whole and links to this this body that I've been carrying around for all these decades. And I would like to be able to share this in a way that kind of helps people maybe have a shortcut towards some of the possibilities that have opened up for me as I've begun to put the pieces together. I'm hoping that the same thing happens for others. That's one thing that I definitely wanted to share. And the other thing that I wanted to share is that it doesn't matter where you are, at what stage you are in your process of learning or moving or being. This course is an opportunity to look at different aspects that might be new to you, renew your relationship to movement processes that perhaps you know very well but have never looked at in this particular way, and also to find a very practical way of addressing your challenges, whether they be physical, mental, or emotional pain. I just feel like this whole journey is an opportunity to become more human, more who you feel you were destined to be.
Amen to that. Well, thank you for pioneering this methodology and for really being at the forefront of our understanding of how body, mind, and spirit intertwine and pathways to create more freedom and opportunity for fulfillment within these vessels, these holy vessels we've been given. So thank you for creating this method, the Kenissa process, and for offering it to Shift in our global network. And again, if you'd like to go further, you are welcome to do so at kinessasomatics.com, Kinesa somatics.com. Give the page a read, and if you choose to move forward today, you're going to get those 4 extra bonuses from Lavinia's talks on Shift Summits, and you're in great hands for a journey into more freedom. So thank you all for joining, and thank you, Lavinia, for a beautiful offering.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for the opportunity.